On FTN today, we discuss all the latest developments as Arne Slot has left Liverpool. We'll find out his next destination and we'll find out who is set to replace Slot at Liverpool. Tons of big reports to get through. I hope you guys enjoy. Let's discuss today's breaking news. Arne Slot leaves Liverpool with immediate effect after a 2-year spell at Anfield. Iraola now is the clear favourite to replace him as Liverpool's new manager. And Slot ends a season in which Liverpool end up 5th in the league table, trophyless, 25 points off of Arsenal, and suffered 19 defeats in the league. Now, what's really interesting about these reports is that there were many higher-ups within FSG that believed that Arne Slot deserved another season in charge and that many of the difficulties he faced was outside of his control. They centered around the very unfortunate passing of Diogo Jota, which had a very heavy toll on everyone at Liverpool, and that can't be ignored. There was also belief that the numerous injuries to key players and other players at key times throughout the season definitely impacted the quality of work that Arne Slot could have displayed as well too. But I guess ultimately, Liverpool felt like they had to change their thoughts and opinions because one thing always decides the fate of a manager, and that's whether the players still back you or not. Now, last season, we saw what Mohamed Salah was saying in very fake fashion, very publicly, around the lack of standards being maintained at Liverpool and over maybe confusion around a different approach and different way of playing at Liverpool as well too. And listen, when the club captain and when someone like Mohamed Salah feels that confident to kind of just announce his thoughts like that publicly, he's clearly speaking on behalf of the rest of the team, right? Hence why there were so many players were kind of questioning their Liverpool futures, with reports suggesting players like Alisson now are increasingly likely to remain at Liverpool now, which tells you maybe everything you need to know about how the players felt working under Slot. Losing the players worked against Slot, as well as the fact that I guess they lost confidence in the final 2 defeats of the season. Even though Champions League football had been secured, I guess it was the manner in which Liverpool ended the season, which didn't give much confidence for an Arne Slot having another go at things for the following season. Now, if there was one thing that I like to add to things, I do have some sympathy for Arne Slot, and I think we can't forget the fact that he was not hired to be Liverpool's manager. He was hired as the head coach. That was the responsibilities that he had. Anyway, Slot gave his farewells to Liverpool fans, saying it's been an amazing ride together with Liverpool. I am so grateful that we were able to win the league from last season. And as we know, Iraola now is the favourite to take over the helms at Liverpool for next season. Now, I find it pretty fascinating because originally there was a lot of, interesting discussion that Slot would remain again. And that was the reason why Xabi Alonso wasn't being targeted. But as I've already stressed in this video, there were 2 deciding factors which changed everyone's opinions, and that was how they ended the season as well as losing the players. But to be fair with you, I think if there was one guy that was probably perfect to kind of take over at Liverpool, someone that can kind of continue the work that Klopp showed over that incredible spell at the club, what Slot even showed in his first season at Anfield. I think Iraola's football, his energy, the pressing, I feel like his philosophy probably complements this Liverpool more than what Xabi Alonso would have brought. It's going to be their new manager for next season. Bayer Leverkusen feel the same way as well too, but it's quite obvious that Iraola has been very patient in regards to jobs that he selects. He was very close to becoming the Chelsea manager. However, Chelsea decided to turn their attentions to Xabi Alonso, and they acted very fast to ensure that Liverpool, of course, wouldn't have any time to have conversations with him. So it was very good negotiation from Chelsea's part. But Iraola was the close second, and now he will be the favourite for the Liverpool job. But before I continue on with that, interesting developments, but Arne Slot already is becoming the lead candidate for the job at AC Milan. Now it's between himself and Oliver Glasner, who's also held discussions with AC Milan, but you probably imagine that Arne Slot wants to remain in the Premier League as he's achieved incredible things with Crystal Palace as they recently lifted the Conference League, beating Rayo Vallecano 1-0 in that game. So listen, Arne Slot, I respect this guy. I think he did a fantastic job at Feyenoord. I thought he was impeccable in that first season, taking over from Jurgen Klopp in very difficult circumstances. It's easy to look back at that season and kind of, reduce everything to that being a Klopp team, and Slot wasn't really in charge to kind of, have much say and control. But I want to bring up this point, yeah, and that's the fact that Arne Slot was hired as a head coach. He was categorically hired in that capacity, which means that he doesn't have much say when it comes to having actual control of how money is allocated and spent in a transfer window. Now, Liverpool went on an incredible spree, signing guys like Isak for record money, Florian Wirtz being off competition from clubs like Man City and Bayern Munich, for example. But were they necessarily the type of players Arne Slot was hoping to kind of add and introduce to his team? Were those the type of players that would make it easy for him to find a system that balances all of this type of talent? Yes, like nearly $500 million was spent by Liverpool. Hugo Ekitike, Isak, Frimpong, Giovanni Leone, who unfortunately had an injury the whole season, Kirkeged. This is a very ambitious window, right? This was a window that made a statement suggesting that Liverpool are not here to win one league title every now and then. They're here to be the dominant force in English football. However, when you look very closely at these players signed, did they necessarily complement down to a T the game pressing, high intensity, high volume type of football that Liverpool have been known for? It was a massive loss when you don't have players like Trent Alexander-Arnold, probably the best long passer in the entirety of the Premier League, who you don't really have at your disposal. And he was kind of like the deep playmaker from that right-hand side that would quickly find and release the wingers, quickly find and release Mohamed Salah. It's that type of player connection and understanding that you can't just replace by signing someone else, because there's only one Trent Alexander-Arnold. That's the reality. And I think sometimes in the game, yeah, when clubs like Liverpool's and Barca's and Co's, at the best clubs at the highest level, do the things they do, most times it's because they have access to some of the most unique players in the game. And I think Liverpool, under Klopp and with the players they had at their disposal, they were definitely tailor-made to play a particular type of football. And I just think with the money that was spent on these particular players, what was the balance really going to entail? Now, one of the things that Slot came under much criticism from Liverpool fans was constantly rotating the team. But I kind of sympathize from the coaching perspective, right? Because yes, he could have maybe had a set position for Szoboszlai. Maybe he was using and rotating the midfield a bit too much, not allowing for there to be much like continuity between the team. Florian Wirtz was playing on the left side sometimes, playing in behind strikers and playing in the pivot at times as well. He got better as the season went on, but he didn't get the best out of him. But I'm not going to lie, you guys, when I look at a team like this, putting it back on the screen again, the only thing I think of is Liverpool are tailor-made to play a system with a diamond midfield, with Isak and Ekitike leading the line, having Florian Wirtz in behind. I think this could have been the best way to use this team. There wasn't much opportunity for Klopp to Slot to kind of test this out. A few times he did that during the season. It clearly needed more time. And there wasn't enough opportunities to do so due to all the injuries coming at the wrong time. To think that you splashed nearly $250 million on both Isak and Ekitike and they barely play games together. For me, that tells me that something was unfortunate with the season, because there clearly had to be a game plan and system that utilized both these guys in the team together. There's no way you're signing Ekitike's or Isak's to act as competition and number twos for each other. So whoever the next manager is set to be will have a very tall order on his hand, making sense of the dynamism in this team. Kirkeged, Frimpong, they're vertical runners. They're not guys you're going to use to kind of build up from the back. The midfield needs to find better balance. Liverpool fans are crying out for a holding six. Endo was like a short-term replacement. They've struggled, but they've definitely tried to get that six. Caicedo, Lavia, and many others. But it's quite obvious that this Liverpool team under Iraola, if they have any hopes to go anywhere, they will need that type of six to bring that balance, to give the attack more life. That's what it's simply going to come down to. So I do sympathize for Slot, because I think he is paying the prized for circumstances outside of his control at times. I know that a lot of us have expectations of managers to kind of make sense of a mess that's been given their way, but you have to look at the principles of play, right? You need to find a balance. Yeah. If there isn't a balance, managers will constantly be stuck in this loop where they have to constantly find it somehow. Because anytime you have an idea, it isn't like achieve at like a 10 out of 10 level, because you don't have the right players needed for the way you need to play. And I do think that maybe some of Liverpool's directors kind of have to take a bit of accountability for this one, for forcing so much drastic change so soon. But listen, if there's one guy who's probably going to benefit from this selection of players, right, it most likely is going to be Iraola. I've said this before, but I felt like Xabi Alonso made more sense going to Chelsea, and Iraola makes perfect sense going to Liverpool based on his high-intensity demands for the team. Yeah? The way he puts the fullbacks forward, you could imagine Kirkes and maybe Florian Wirtz or Ngahoma having more of a relationship down that left-hand side. Frimpong might find more life in the team as well. I'm curious how he balances that midfield. I'd imagine that he will adapt, because Iraola doesn't just use two up front. He does use a 4-3-3, as we've seen with Ryan, playing further forward on the right-hand side as well. And it makes you think, could this be a future Liverpool player in the distant future? Time will tell if Iraola gets his way. But I do think that Liverpool are kind of in a good position under him. If there's one thing Iraola is going to do, I think, is kind of introduce a real dynamic partnership with the front two. You're waiting for Ekitike to recover. This might not really come to fruition until December or the start of this year at least, right, with Ekitike's current injury. But this is like an early, small little look behind how Liverpool could line up. Of course, question marks on that midfield, question marks in defence. I think, what's his name? Alisson might be remaining at Liverpool now. That Slot's leaving too. I think maybe a few players must be sacrificed to find that balance. But I think with the instructions and the way that Iraola sets his team out to play, I think if there's one team that really complements his style, man, it's Liverpool. It will continue off the work done under Klopp, under Slot's first season. And I think Iraola is the perfect manager for this high volume, intense type of football. So share your thoughts and opinions on this story. How are you feeling about things? Because now we're going to move on to one of the big stories that has been breaking, and that's Julian Alvarez. And we're learning that Barcelona, as we all know, are heavily pursuing a deal for Julian Alvarez. Was those Joao Pedro links just a smokescreen this entire time? There has been some mad controversy though, because Atletico have been accusing Barca of a smear campaign, of a potential bid to sign Julian Alvarez this summer. Now, reports first came out suggesting that Barca had made an initial offer of around 100 million euros for the player's services, with hopes that something could be finalized pretty soon. This was confirmed by many major outlets, but Atletico were not happy about the situation over the last 24 hours, and boy, did they showcase their dissatisfaction in incredible fashion. You'll see from the tweets, man, they was not holding back on social media. They were doing a lot of parody transfer stories in regards to Atleti making attempts for Barca's best players, as you're seeing here with Pedri and Rafinha as well too, and with their offer, which was a very comical one, for Lamine Yamal. But they gave an explanation on social media about where their stance was. And as they say, we would like to take this opportunity to categorically deny that we made an offer to the sporting director of Barcelona to join our scouting team in the Brazilian market. No, Atletico Madrid would never do something like that. However, over the past few months, we have been subjected to a relentless smear campaign against one of our players. Calculated leaks, fake news, constant disrespect, the cooler version of the propaganda machine inventing little stories, phone calls before head-to-head clashes. But of course, it would never occur to us to either have the vice president of the referees on the payroll or to rely on political favors to register players. Oh, respect and values. Atletico Madrid was not holding back whatsoever, man. They are livid with what's been going on, because let's be serious, you could probably make some strong suggestions that Barca may have been trying to tap up Julian Alvarez to kind of sway him, to kind of end his relationship at Atletico Madrid, put pressure on him by doing smokescreen deals for guys like Joao Pedro, because that's ideally their guy. And Julian Alvarez has made things very public that he won't leave Barcelona. He won't leave Atletico Madrid unless it's for Barcelona. Now, after all of this that's been happening, I'm curious to know how things are going to develop now, because Barcelona are happy to go up to the value of 135 million euros to try and engineer a deal. But there's belief that Atletico Madrid want around 150 million euros, which might be just a bit too much money. But now, I'd imagine their current stance would be to kind of just rebuff as many offers, and they probably prefer to do business with outside parties, which probably is perfect news for interested parties such as Paris Saint-Germain and Arsenal Football Club, who are going to see play later today in a very exciting Champions League final clash. So this probably gives the foreign counterparts maybe a bit more optimism that Atleti could be more willing to strike a deal with them. However, Julian Alvarez is very much enamored by the possibility to play for Atletico Madrid, for Barcelona. So we have to watch this space. We have to see what happens. And you know what? I kind of understand Atletico Madrid's stance. I think there has been a lot of disrespect behind how Barcelona have been pursuing this type of deal. You could argue maybe Atleti are clearly rattled by things because they're in a very dire situation, right? Well, not too dire, but with Griezmann now confirming he's playing in the MLS, with Alvarez wanting to leave, and with the suggestions that Alexander Soloth might be leaving Atleti as well too, this will be an incredibly important window for Atletico Madrid, where they could be in the market to sign 3 new forwards, which is very hard, and many clubs will take advantage of the fact that they're in a desperate situation to reinforce up front, which is going to maybe add more premium to these values, right? So yeah, man, I feel like there's a lot to come from these reports. More updates are going to come. Let me know in the comment section, do you think Julian Alvarez will end up in Barcelona, or do you think his future is elsewhere? Because right now, my friends, we have to discuss more reports coming in. And we turn our attentions to Inter Milan, the new Scudetto champions, and they're looking for some big reinforcements. And they're looking to turn back to the Premier League. I feel like the Premier League is becoming a very popular league now for many Italian clubs. And one of the players that Inter Milan are really enamored by is Curtis Jones. Now, Christian Kiva, the manager, is reportedly absolutely crazy for the Liverpool midfield player. And he feels like he would be the perfect addition to add to the team due to his well-rounded ability in midfield. At the moment, there has been an initial inquiry and offer of around 20 million euros that's been asked for. However, Liverpool want around 30 million instead. So let's see what happens with this report. I don't think the valuation is too crazy. I think there's probably a possibility that something could be struck. And I think if you're Curtis Jones, your time at Liverpool might be up, because Liverpool have to sacrifice. They have to kind of sell to reinvest into signing other positions. And I think that holding 6 is a key position needed for Liverpool right now. I do think Curtis Jones is a pretty decent player. His carrying skills are really good. I think being in a team that can allow him to be like a first team star week in, week out is probably the best thing for himself. Now, there are other clubs interested, most notably in Galatasaray as well. So Curtis Jones could be one of the favourites to be leaving Liverpool. In the meantime, we turn attentions to Ruben Dias, with Inter Milan hoping to strike a similar deal to what they did with Man City to sign Akanji last summer, where essentially they signed Akanji on loan, but when Akanji played more than 50% of games for Inter Milan that season, Inter would have to buy him outright, and they bought him for around 15 million euros. The thing, though, is that Inter Milan are looking to sell Jan Bissek, with suggestions that they could receive around 40 million euros for his sale. They're hoping, if that was the case, they'd reinvest that into signing someone like Ruben Dias. These reports come from Gazzetta dello Sport, and they're suggesting that Enzo Maresca now is looking to kind of reinforce in his defense. There are going to be big changes made. They're expecting Vitor Riech, who went on loan to, how am I forgetting the Spanish league? Girona last season. He'll be coming back, and Enzo Maresca wants to add different type of reinforcement. With Ruben Dias kind of losing a spot on the team as the season went on, would Man City cash in on someone who was of big value for them? Inter Milan want this deal done, but there's suggestions that they would need to pay at least 50 mil euros and have to pay at least 6 mil euros a year to get this deal over the line. So let's see what happens as the season goes on, because now, my friends, we're going to end things with the final story. And one of the players will be incredibly popular this summer is Bernardo Silva, who's confirmed to be leaving on a free from Man City. It seems like his future now will be destined for La Liga, with both Barcelona and Atletico Madrid desperately trying to secure a deal for his services. Now, I think if he goes to Atleti, that guarantees more game time. But if he goes to Barcelona, that guarantees more opportunities for silverware. And I think Barca would probably love to add some much needed experience to balance out some of the best youth on the planet. But again, you still need that foresight to realize experience will only benefit these guys some more. And after some of the injuries that's been happening in midfield in particular, I think maybe a Bernardo Silva on a free man, I think is one of the best deals probably this summer for any club that can sign him. It clearly seems like Bernardo, out of respect for Man City, doesn't want to play in the Premier League anymore and probably wants to still play top-class football in Spain whilst getting ready for the end of his career as well too. Interesting that both Atleti and Barca are having their own personal fights now for the services of Alvarez, but I think, of course, Bernardo Silva will be one of the key ones for either team, and I'm curious to know what is going to happen with these developments. Ideally, if you guys don't know, I'm a Chelsea fan. I would have been very open to this guy signing for us and adding some needed experience. But Bernardo Silva, man, has become an absolute legend in the Premier League, done wonders under Iraola. I think going to Spain is going to be great for him, his style of play. And I would not be surprised if he finds himself up at Barcelona. So, my friends, man, that's all the big reports that dropped today. Make sure you guys stay tuned on FTN News to get more updates on the biggest stories happening this summer window across Europe. So, I hope to see you guys back. Hit that like button, subscribe, and I'll see you soon. Cool.